Hello, here I am. I'm leaving Ohio, first state down, and I have a lot to say. The first thing that happened is I arrived in Columbus, and I stopped by, dropped my stuff off, and I went to dinner with Broadway composer of The Wild Party and the Addams Family musical, Andrew Lippa. He's getting involved in the Columbus community. He's in a state where his vote matters, and he can get involved in organizations like Equality Ohio. He went to them and he said, you know, what can I do? Can I throw a concert? Can I bring people from Broadway? Because unlike some of the big blue states, Ohio is a place where LGBT rights are not a guarantee. And it's the type of thing where people in the community need to step up, be an example, and fight for them. So that was an amazing dinner, a great way to kick it off. I had no idea what was even going to come next. The next morning, I drove to Gambier, Ohio, which is a very small town, sort of off of Mount Vernon in Ohio. It's the home to Kenyon College, which is a liberal arts college, but it's a terribly small town. One post office, one restaurant, one deli, one bookstore, that's about it. And the mayor talked to me about her background. She went to University of Michigan Law School, she moved to Chicago, she was practicing law in the city, and so was her husband, and working really hard as a real estate attorney. And then at a certain point, her husband, who was a graduate of Kenyon, said, you know what, we're not spending time as a family. There's a entry-level position in the finance department of Kenyon College. I think I want to pick up and move to Ohio and leave Chicago behind so we can spend time with our son. And that's what they did. And Mayor Kimmel, Kachin, started working in the admissions department, tried a bunch of different things, and then entered local city government, and now is the mayor of Gambier. So we drove around in the village Jeep, and everywhere Kachin went, it was, hi mayor, how you doing? Rolling down the window, saying hi to people. And Kachin said to me something that I'm not going to forget. She said, you know, progressive people need to get brave. You know, they can't just huddle up in these cities. They got to move out to the rest of the country. Why should other people have the most beautiful parts of the country? You know, she had the opportunity to have an education, and now she lives in a place where she can make a difference in this community. She said, you know, being the mayor, it's the nuts and bolts. You know, you're organizing cemeteries, you're making sure they're mown, you're making sure that the sewage plant has someone in charge of it who's going to be able to take care of that. You're in charge of these daily, day-to-day operations, and sometimes you're working with people that you don't always see eye to eye with, especially when you're in a community that has a liberal arts college like Kenyon College, but also has Mount Vernon Nazarene College, which is a very, very well-renowned evangelical university. And all those kids go to school together in the same public elementary and high school. And so these parents who do, you know, Eagle Scouts for their kids, Cub Scouts, they have to figure out how to get along with these people that they may not see eye to eye with. And that's important because ultimately they're all trying to run the government together. They're all trying to raise their kids together. And when these contentious issues come up, you need to find a way to deal with it. And there's a lot to do with preconceived notions that, oh, you're a liberal, you're this, you're an evangelical Christian, you're this. But she said that going out in the community and fighting those conceptions, you can sort of shape the world you want to live in and have these conversations with people. Also, she pointed out that the quality of living is amazing. I got to see her house. It's a very small town, so we had to drive by it eventually. This is all this big white house, art studio, music room. Cost of living just makes being out in rural Ohio affordable and doable. She said we actually spend time as a family. The next step for me was driving to Cleveland, Ohio, where my friend Austin Love works for Channel 3 News, and he's on the news. He's kind of a celebrity. He got recognized quite a few times. And I show up in Ohio City, we sit down for tacos, and then his friend Dave shows up, and Dave is born, bred Cleveland. But Cleveland, kind of like my hometown of Rockford, is sort of split into two sides. There's the east side and the west side. And unlike Rockford, where the east side is predominantly white and the west is predominantly African American, is flipped in Cleveland, and the east side is predominantly African American. So Dave said to me, he said, all right, what do you want to see in Cleveland? I said, I want to see the best thing about Cleveland and the worst thing about Cleveland. And Dave said to me, that's not the way I would look at it. Do you want to see highbrow, middlebrow, or lowbrow people? And I said, you know, I have one day in Cleveland. I want to see everything. I want to see all the brows. Take me to see all of the brows. So that's what we did. For the rest of the afternoon, we went to the West Side Market, which is a beautiful indoor, vaulted, domed, old 1910s train station looking building with all these different shops and the stalls inside full of food and candy and fudge. Went around there and I got to interview some of the shopkeepers about...
Continue on I-90 East.
Thank you, darling. I got to interview some of the shopkeepers about what the West Side Market has meant for the community, what Ohio means to them, and everyone is really proud to live in Cleveland. You know, it's gone through some ups and downs. At one point, it was the number 6 largest city. It's where the Rockefellers were, and it's sort of lost some population, but it's making a comeback, and people are reinvesting in the downtown, and they love where they are. Then Dave said, meet me at a bar called Skeets, which is East Cleveland. So Austin and I went for a little drive. We saw downtown, we saw the lake. One of the biggest things I heard is, in order to restore Cleveland to its glory, we need to build up the lakefront, kind of like Chicago. Chicago's comparison I heard quite a few times. So we saw the lakefront, which actually could use with a few buildings. We saw the downtown and the Playhouse Square, which has the most Broadway-sized theaters outside of New York. There's plays going on all the time. Symphony. I was sort of in heaven. I was like, when am I going to see a show? I don't have time. Working actors, those who are unhappy in New York right now, maybe want to think about moving to Cleveland. So then got in the car after stopping by Channel 5 News Studios and sort of getting a tour of downtown, and we went to Skeets, which is on the east side. And Skeets is a predominantly, by predominantly I mean almost exclusively black bar. And we went in, and when we first walked in, you could tell, you know, I'm about as white as can be, and Austin isn't. Actually, he's probably whiter than I am. And we walk in and we meet Dave and we start talking, and you know, I'm not drinking on this trip, so I can't really just have a beer and hope that I'm suddenly very charming. I actually had to sit down and actually had to talk to people. And we met a guy named Herb, and he worked in sheet metal, and just an amazing man. His brother is a writer who's finally starting to make it out in LA, writing about his community in Cleveland. And Herb has raised 3 kids, in a lot of ways on his own, because both of his parents were killed in the 70s, and the case was never solved. And just the feeling of community in this bar, everyone knew each other, everyone was saying hi to everyone else, and there's the sense that this is where people come after work to see people in their community. It feels like a community staple. I've never been to a bar where I walk in, I'm like, hey, how's it going? How are you? How are you? And not just to the bartenders, to the other regulars. There was this sense of this was a community staple. And then I talked to Herb's son about the mentality that leads to crime in Cleveland. One thing that I heard as well, besides building the lakefront, is that Cleveland has crime. And another guy named Lenny said, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. There's a lot of crime. And something that Herb's son Rito said to me is, you know, there's this sense of a lack of loyalty. When people see other people having things, they want that thing. They don't want to go get it for themselves. They want to take what that other person has. There's this jealousy. And Rio said, there's not a culture of, hey, could you teach me how you got that? There's a culture of, I want what you have. We stepped outside and we had a little interview, and one thing he said is, he pointed across the street to another bar and said someone was kidnapped and shot in the head across the way here. A girl was picked up and murdered and put under a deck. These things happen, so there's this sense that the only thing you're guaranteed is now, and that creates a desire to live day by day and sometimes to get what you want to get in that day in a way that isn't positive. Her name was Denise, and we went outside and she pointed to a mural in the back area, the back garden area, that had paintings of different African American celebrities, but also different people from the community, because it's such a community all-star place to be. And she was talking about her faith and how she believes that in order to solve a lot of the problems in the community, people need to turn to religion again and start having a sense of morals that aren't shoved down your throat, but something that people actually adopt, and a belief in a higher power. She started talking about this belief that all we have is today. That's the only thing we're guaranteed. And said to me, you know, at this bar we keep it open on Thanksgiving, we keep it open on Christmas, because this bar is sometimes the only place where people have to go. Skeets is the place in the community where people are always guaranteed to find a home. She says, I want to guarantee that for everyone in the community, because this is all we have. We have to fight for this, and we're not guaranteed anything. I was very moved and very touched by the experience. Went back to Austin, hung out, talked a little politics. This morning, I went to Shaker Square to have breakfast with a man named Leon Bibb, who is an icon in the Cleveland community. He's been on Channel 3, Channel 5 News, and at our table, our waitress brought over our breakfast, and she said, "Good to see you, Leon." He's that kind of guy where everyone recognizes him. And I talked to him about what made his story a Cleveland story. He said he was raised in a Leave It to Beaver style upbringing in a working class black neighborhood, and he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to be on TV. He wanted to be a journalist, and he got so much out of the Cleveland community. He was able to achieve his dream very quickly. He went and enlisted in Vietnam. He was drafted, and through the GI Bill, he went and got his education and his master's, and he's been on TV around Ohio for almost 40 years, and he's a real staple and an icon, and he walked me through a lot of the firsts in Ohio history, and specifically Cleveland history, from the Rockefellers in the early 1900s, and when that was really booming, to the first of having the first black mayor and the first black man to really exercise political power, starting in Cleveland and then spreading to other cities. And we talked for about an hour, and I got on the road. Now it's raining. I'm on my way to New York. This is my first state, and I don't know if I can top it. To be honest, I was kind of like, Ohio, like, what am I going to do there? Like, I can't wait to get that over with, because Ohio, before I felt the way I feel now, it sort of seemed like Ohio was just a blank slate. It was just sort of the middle of the country. It was sort of Midwest, sort of East. But Ohio has so much natural beauty to it. It's got a diversity between rural and urban, and even within the urban, I don't know if I could know Cleveland even in 2 months. It's such a complex, multifaceted, beautiful city. In Gambier, I was enchanted by the promise of living in a community where everything you do makes a difference and everybody knows you. And so Ohio, you've started me off right, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next few states. My name's Ryan Bernstein. State 1 down, 49 to go.